Welcome everyone to KidLit Catalyst. Today we're joined by Suzanne Williams and Joan Holub.
The publisher said, would I mind if someone else illustrated it? And I was kind of like, the whole reason I was writing was to illustrate, really, at that point. And so it kind of hurt my feelings, but I went with it and it turned out to be good.
And they just sold their 6th co-written series. Does that make them serialists? Just
I think so.
And you can expect that. You can expect that one in 2023. So we have that to look forward. Joan lives in North Carolina. She can be found online, and Suzanne lives in Washington State. And hopefully they'll share with us how they met. And with that, we get the great privilege of connecting with you, Wonder Women, today. So glad you're here.
You. Or you miss, being able to hang out with Suzanne in person. That's kind of rare now.
Yeah. Right.
So that's kind of a segue, Joan, into talking about how we met.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us how this all got started. My goodness.
Suzanne?
I was like, who wants to speak first? So actually, Joan and I met at an SCBWI, Society of Children's Book Writers conference that was in Washington. And at the time, she was living in West Seattle. And we just hit it off. I think actually she came up to ask about the illustrator of my second book. Only my second book had been out by the time we met. And we got to talking and went out to dinner that night after the conference with some other writers. And after that, I don't know how it happened, but somehow we started getting together, 3 or 4 times a year, maybe, Joan?
Yeah.
And we would, of course, talk shop and talk about the various things that we were working on separately. And then after years and years of that, Joan popped the question. She asked me if I'd ever considered writing with another author before. And I said, no. And she said, well, would you consider it? And I said, and it didn't take me very long, probably within just in a few seconds to say yes, because I knew from all the times that Joan and I had talked that we would be compatible from the things that we just talked about. You know, we were both very conscientious and hardworking. We loved the same kind of things. We both had done fantasy series. I'd written about fairy blossom fairies and princesses, and she did other doll hospital series where the dolls were didn't they come alive, Joan? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, they came alive. They were it was a historical thing, so you kind of learn some history. I like to always combine like facts and fiction in books.
Yeah.
It's a natural occurrence.
Right. So we'd both done a lot of middle grade series and chapter books and stuff. So that was the beginnings of it. And then the next time we got together, we brought some ideas to the table. And Joan had always been interested in Greek mythology. And we both agreed that her idea was the one that we liked the best. And so we worked up a couple of ideas, and then we waited 2.5 years before we finally sold it. And by that time, Joan had moved to North Carolina. So all of our collaboration since then has been done long distance, but of course with the internet and with email, it's not difficult to do that, So.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons you really couldn't sell a Greek mythology book or series at one time, it just wasn't popular with readers and publishers, but Rick Riordan he came out with his books right about the time we were presenting ours, and so his were doing well. And so publishers were like, well, maybe we'd like to see more of this. And we were like, here, our agent. Wow. So it was kind of serendipity with that, because I think there was a time when you really could not really sell Greek mythology, but just about all of our series are kind of hung on some sort of framework, like Greek mythology. Grimtastic Girls is hung on Grimm fairy tales, but just kind of with a twist that moderns it up, and there's adventure that girls create and participate in. It's very girl centric. That's just something we like to write, where they are kind of the force that's driving the book, not like side characters or even equal with the boys. They're kind of like, you know, front and center.
Love that.
You know, Suzanne, I was trying to figure out when I met you, and it was actually before I was published. And I don't think you had been published all that long. We were both elementary school librarians, and you presented at the, you know, one of our state library conferences. And it was the book. The girl's name is Hannah, but what was the title? My Name Is.
Oh, Mommy Doesn't Know My Name. That was actually the
Yes.
first book. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that book. That's really
Yeah,
great.
isn't it
Yeah.
sweet? I love that book too. Anyway, it was kind of like, you know, I met you there and talked with you later, and it was like, I think I could do this.
Oh, good. I'm glad I encouraged you.
Yeah.
We were both about the
Inspired
same
her.
point, but
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Joan, what was your first book?
I think it
I
was,
remember there's so many.
well, I think it was Boo-Hoo, a spooky lift-a-flat book with Scholastic. And that's back when I started as an illustrator. That's what I wanted to be. And so I wrote and illustrated that book. And then I kind of kept doing that for a few more books. And then I had this book called Pajama Party. It was an early reader. And the publisher said, would I mind if someone else illustrated it? And I was kind of like, the whole reason I was writing was to illustrate, really, at that point. And so it kind of hurt my feelings, but I went with it, and it turned out to be good, because now I've just segued into writing, and I love that. There's not enough time to do both, and so many good illustrators out there right now that, you know, I'm pretty happy with the way things are going. And I love working with Suzanne, obviously. I had actually tried writing with a couple of other people before I met Suzanne. It's not like I was just dying to do that, but, you know, friends that were authors, I thought I would try it. And what happened with in both instances, I think, was that they weren't, they had more ownership of their work, and that, which is totally fine. You know, I get that, but Suzanne and I really have a sharing thing where we trade our work and, you know, just make all kinds of comments that the other person accepts, and it's a real give and take. And it's hard to let go of your work. In some cases, it just doesn't work if you're not willing to commingle.
yeah, I think it's been a progressive thing. I think right at first it was probably more difficult to do that when we were first starting out, but it became easier and easier, of course, the longer we did it and the more we trusted each other. And because we always seem to be on the same wavelength,
right,
that helps, you know.
Yeah,
it's like, oh wow, that's a great idea, I should have thought of that, you know.
And yet I think that we're just a good mix. I don't think that I don't think like my books would be as good without you, and, you know, maybe vice versa, you know, that these particular books anyway, they're just like a good mingling. We see things the other one didn't see, and we're like, oh yeah, but we agree once it's pointed out to us.
Yeah,
for the most part. Go ahead.
We did discuss before we got started and talked about how we wanted to leave our egos out of it and just do what was best for that particular book. So we did have conversations about that, I remember. Yeah. And now, of course, it's like I tell Joan sometimes, we're like a well-oiled machine. We've been working together for so long, you know, that we have our, you know, routines and the way we work together down, and it goes pretty smoothly, you know.
But when we wrote our synopsis, it was about like, we did about 5 chapters, or I think we did 3 chapters, and they wanted a couple more. So we wound up doing 5 of the 13 chapters or something. And when we made our, what we were going to send out to try to solicit a publisher to publish it. And, you know, Suzanne was like, well, how are we going to make this work? We had done it for 1 book, basically. And how are we going to make this work, writing 1 book at a time? How are we going to make it work? And I remember I was like, oh, we'll just worry about it. Just see if they publish it. We'll figure it out, you know? And so you want to talk about how we actually do it?
Yeah, we knew a little bit about how other author teams work together. And we knew that some of them would like alternate every other chapter. And both of us right away said, no, that sounds like way too much work.
Yeah.
You know? So we decided that we would do basically, someone would be responsible for the outline and the first draft of every other book. And then the partner would do the second draft. And then the third draft, which is usually the last draft we do before we turn it over to our editor, would be the person who started with it. And luckily, they've always, until recently, sold our books in groups of 2. So that was really easy, to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you get a pretty true mix of things by the time you get to that third draft, though, because we write in completely, we'll sometimes, do complete different dialogue. The partner will change the dialogue, change description or add description. Sometimes recommend dropping a character. This is not just like editing. We very much rewrite each other's stuff, as we go along. So that's how we've worked it out between the 2 of us. And
Did you guys agree on any kind of framework or rules before you started? I've heard a lot of people advise that you kind of make like a contract, how you're going to relate to each other and how you're going to interact before you embark on this co-authoring.
You probably should have.
I co-authored those 3, and we did no such thing. We just jumped in and figured it out as we went. So
yeah,
I'm wondering if you guys kind of set up anything ahead of time or if you just figured it out as you went along.
I think once we sold it, we just had a conversation and said, well, this seems like it might work. Let's each write a first draft, because we sold 4 books at once. So that was easy. I wrote the first one and Suzanne wrote the second one, kind of at the same time though, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I did the third one also, and then you did the. Sometimes we're alternating, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, and sometimes it works out that we just change it up a little depending on what other things we're working on and what our timelines are. So we're very loose on that. It's just whatever seems to work the best for both of us,
And it's the first time we traded things, it was kind of a shock to see how much red there was what Suzanne had put in my stuff. And you kind of look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, and you're like, oh wait, but you're like, this is pretty good what she did here, And at first I would go through line by line. Okay, I'll take this one. I won't take this one. And then now when I get it from her, I just accept it all. I accept everything she did, but I might remember something I did when I'm going through and I'm like, well, I think that worked better. I like that better because I had this reason for later. And so, I kind of go back like that, and our feelings aren't hurt by stuff. I don't think.
Yeah, and I think we both decided that we will really think, like she said, by now we just accept all, when we get it from our partner, and then go back, and if there's anything that seems like it doesn't quite work, we might go back to the first draft. But 9 times out of 10, everything that she's done is, I'm in agreement with.
It just sort of gives it a boost, a nice boost to the next stage to have somebody else do it. Right. I think, we kind of went in. It could have been a disaster, honestly. But fortunately,
it was not.
You hear stories, right? Sometimes it is.
Well, once we got the contract, we were like, okay, now how are we going to do this? But it did work out.
Yeah,
I know you both work on your own projects separately. How has this experience affected your solo work?
Shall I start joking?
Well, I'm constantly, I often 3/4 of the time I start a book with a title. And so I've got like a columns of titles of books and maybe a little note under it of what I might want it to be. And then every now and then there's a gap in what we're doing, and, and I'll do that, or it just sort of festers in my mind or something. And then all of a sudden there it is, it comes out. So I fit all that stuff in around there. Probably work too much, but I love it. So, and when you work so hard initially to like get anything published, it's just like a joy and a gift to have people want to publish your work. Because it was hard for me to get published. I don't know about all of you, but did you all like have an instant success with your first book, or was it all like a trying for quite a while? Suzanne had an agent when I met her. Did that?
Yeah, and that I was going to say that was another lucky thing for us, is that Joan actually was not agented. She had been agented, but wasn't at the time that we started with Goddess Girls. And so she decided to go with my agent. Oh my gosh, I can't think how hard it would have been if we'd had different agents.
Yeah, because she's done things like, we've got graphic novels coming up of Goddess Girls and Heroes in Training. She's gotten some movie option type things, and we couldn't have done that. And it's just so nice. She's honest and friendly, and she's just been great. A gift.
Yeah, and not having to deal with two different agents,
Yeah, I know. And my agent was an art rep, my first agent, and that had kind of just fallen away as I quit illustrating. So.
Oh yeah. So Joan, your question about the beginnings, for me, I really didn't know a lot. I just, it's like I had wanted to take a sabbatical, and I had been like working on adult novels and some poetry, and they said, well, yeah, you can have this sabbatical, but it's got to directly relate to what you're doing. And it was like, duh, I'm a children's librarian. So it's like I wrote some manuscripts. I sent one like to the head of who was the person who was the head of HarperCollins at the time. I mean, like the executive editor or whatever her title was, and she wanted it. And so I thought, well, okay. And then
easy.
And then and then dear Celeste here, who had started the Whidbey Island Writers Association and the conference, which was getting huge national attention, invited, top children's editors and agents, and, Michael Stearns saw my Dino Sailors and said, send this to me. And so, it's like, that's where that started, and that series. So, it seemed easier to me than it did after that. And then, of course, life gets in the way, like adopting kids and starting a school and things like that. But, so now I feel like I'm a newbie again.
You kind of took some time off.
Deb sounds familiar, similar to mine, because I think I'd only been writing and sending things out about 9 months before Mommy Doesn't Know My Name was picked up. And then of course it took 2 more years, for it to come out, because the illustrations had to be done since I don't illustrate. But after that, the next 5 years, I spent sending many, many things out, and nothing was, getting picked up. So I think one way or the other, you end up paying your dues in the business, So
that's one reason, like, I write from board books up to our Goddess Girls age, because if I'll feel like I'm writing a bunch of picture books and I'll send 3 to my agent and none of them go. And so I just turn my back on that and I go to like a new place. And something finally breaks through in that way. If I were just like doing picture books, then I feel like I would never publish anything else. I have to have that. It just makes you sort of wake up a little bit when you go do something a little bit different. That works for me. Like, board books are so different than Goddess Girls, or doing like a nonfiction kind of book as opposed to Goddess Girls is, really different. So it just kind of breaks through any kind of blockage, I guess, that might be there, instead of sitting there and thinking and thinking and trying. You're just gonna push that away and start afresh over here. So that works for me.
Yeah, I think.
Do you have a favorite, Joan?
A favorite?
Like a favorite, genre or
no, I don't. The one thing I haven't done is YA. I've done board books, early readers, early chapter books, picture books, everything up to YA, really. Novelty books, I've done all that stuff, and YA is just not my thing. I do read it, but I don't.
What inspired going after having a partner? Because it sounds like that was something you came back to before you found this magical combination. What inspired that need or desire?
I don't know. It just sounded like you can't, like if you write something, I kind of have to set it aside and then I come back fresh to it and go, well, this stinks, this part of it is not working. And if you have, it just moves along a lot faster if you have a partner that can immediately look at it and go, this stinks, fix that. And so that's really appealing to me. And I just thought it would be fun, to interact with another person. And so I don't know why it just appealed to me, but it really could go bad. I could see how it could go bad, which would, be really bad. We're lucky, so very lucky.
So glad it's working out.
Yeah, it just seems like, to have somebody there, like for support and also for accountability, because you want to do your part so that, they can move ahead and do their part too. And it just seems like
that's very true.
Be a lot of motivation there.
Yeah. It keeps you on schedule. Suzanne taught me how to outline too by watching what she did. Because when I wrote this Doll Hospital series, I was just winging it. And I would do all the wrong things, right? All 6 chapters going this direction, when no, that was not the direction. So I wasted all that time. And Suzanne, I saw her outline, never wanted to outline. I thought, I don't want to do that. I feel like I'm writing the book twice, but no, outlines are the way to go. I realized for that.
Yeah, and also with the outline, since the partner's looking at it, they can keep you from going a direction that not be viable, before you get down to doing the first draft and questioning that maybe it's not going to, work. You can tell a lot from the outlines. Our outlines are actually pretty detailed. Most of them, not always, but most of the time. Yeah.
That's actually something I was wondering about too, with you two, is what are those things where the other person is different from you that maybe you had to get used to, or maybe you convinced them to change a little bit. I mean, I was thinking, like, I know one of the issues I've had working in like groups of people is I tend to be someone who like has to throw out like all these possible options, and people will think I'm giving my opinion in how I say it or something, and really I'm just like, have to
trying to help
spew it all out or something first. But so I know sometimes you have to get used to those things about people, and so I was wondering what kind of things like that, they're not really hurdles, but because you both have been willing to listen and learn from each other, but just thinking back, what are some of those things?
I think one thing for me is that I tend to, when you said that struck a note with me, because I'm like, oh, I could have this happen or this, look at all the possibilities. And Suzanne's like, well, let's just narrow that down, and that's very helpful. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I can kind of do that myself, because of thinking, oh, I probably got her voice in my head going, let's just narrow that down, instead of going off on those tangents that would take so much time. And I'm trying to think like what things we have said to each other before, like, oh, you're so good at that,
Yeah, I think Joan's really good at like the detail stuff and the descriptive stuff, and much better than I am at coming up with magical details and fun stuff that can happen, in the story around that. That's just one thing that I noticed. And I think your voice is also in my head when I'm writing other stuff. It's like, okay, Joan would say, this is talking heads. You need to have them do something. And,
Yeah, that's nice when someone can point that out, that you got talking heads, because we get so excited about the girls' dialogue and interaction, but they're just sitting in a room for a whole chapter, not getting up, not getting down. So, yeah.
So I would need a Suzanne if I was gonna.
You do. Everyone needs a Suzanne. But you can't have her. She's mine.
No.
Well, thank you.
That's so cool that you found somebody that's so complementary to each of your strengths and weaknesses. That's really great.
And yet so similar, so that it blends. Yeah. Like, I think that writing this way actually makes all the books sound like one author, because we both put so much input into them that I don't think they each sound like a different author, which is good.
Yeah, I doubt that people could look at those various books in Goddess Girl series and say, well, this one must have been written by Joan, this one must have been written by Suzanne. I don't think so.
I mean, we proposed 4 books, and from our experience, we had both written series already. We were like, well, if we're lucky, 6, 8, and we're up to like 29 or something like that now, which is incredible. But we're just lucky. There's such a wealth of Greek mythology girls, characters. We did like the first 4 were the same characters, I think, as the next 4, right, Suzanne? Because
Yeah.
we weren't really sure what are we doing. And then when we got an offer for more books, we were like, well, we can't keep writing about, Athena, Persephone, Aphrodite, and Artemis, who else is there? And there are so many female characters that it was a little bit tricky because somebody will be someone's mother and we have them going to middle school together, in our books. So we do take a little license.
Yeah, we took license in deciding which ones were going to be adult characters, like Zeus is the principal of Mount Olympus Academy, and which ones were going to be students. But by the time we decided, as I remember, to diverge and take some of the other goddesses, we had done other minor characters in the series because we needed more kids at the school. So we could just say, okay, we'll write a book about this character that we've already introduced, but we don't know a lot about her yet, from the series. So that helped too. And then eventually we started, having different goddesses visit Mount Olympus Academy, or, so that we could bring in other stories as well. So yeah,
one that I really like, because I took a lot of Egyptian mythology when I was in college, and Egyptian art history, actually. And so we had our 4 girls go to Egypt and meet their counterparts. And, because they were shocked that there was someone else trying to do what they do. So I thought that was really fun. One of my favorite ones.
Yeah, fun to take them out and put them in other settings.
Yeah.
That's great. One of my questions was going to be, how do you keep things fresh and fun when you're doing a series this long, but introduce new characters, switch up the settings?
Yeah.
That's great. Any other tips?
We try to still kind of stay in touch with some of the old ones. We don't push it if they don't fit in the book, but kind of just keep a little reminder, or someone will go to the school at least briefly and run into some of the characters. It's been kind of fun with the first 2 graphic novels for the Goddess Girls and for Heroes in Training. They sent them to us to review, which I wasn't really aware that we were going to get a chance to do that, but it was really interesting to see all the art. And they took our words and just kind of took a bunch of them out and then rejoined them together, sometimes making their own words to make it make sense. It was really fascinating to see. And also the continuity of the art was killer, because on this page their sandals would be gold, and then over here, they're blue, so looking at all those little details and making notes about them was really, it was just such a lesson in how that whole thing works in a way. I thought it was fascinating and kind of scary. Oh no, look, they don't look, because when I was a kid, if this girl's hair was blonde on this page, it better not be red on the other page, or I just couldn't let it go. So
yeah, we really made an effort to try to catch, all of the changes that we could.
Yeah, they did a great job though. I love it. It's so similar to what we did and yet different, which I like.
Yeah, I was surprised how much they really did keep to the storyline. Yeah, and actual words. So.
Yeah, me too, because it had been so long since we wrote those. I was kind of like, is this right? And then I go back and it's a verbatim what we wrote. I guess it is right, and we wrote it.
That's great.
We're this is really good. Oh wait, that's what I wrote.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, imagine what it is from their side doing it. What would that be like? I think it'd be kind of fun to take someone's work and do all, but all that illustration, all that detail, that comic book look, wow, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, and those are coming out
February.
Yeah,
they're already online. So it's so exciting.
That is exciting.
I know some children I know that should get copies, so I'm excited. This is so fun to be on the inside listening to all of this. It's been fabulous ahas. Would you like to do a lightning round to talk about, have a lightning round question? Laurie, do you have a lightning round question for them? This is just one sentence.
I do. What is your best creativity tip? How do you stay creative? How do you keep producing?
That's a hard one. Ladies?
Well, one thing I do is, this sounds like copycatting, but I try to look at everything I can. I look on Amazon at stuff. I don't go into bookstores much anymore. I used to do that a lot, pretty regularly. And I look at their stuff. I'll go on YouTube if I'm curious about a book and kind of read it if it's available. Someone's done a reading of it. And I just try to see what's current, so I don't repeat anything. But maybe I very often find 2 different things, Greek mythology in middle school, you know, and I'm like, how can I put these together? Like two disparate ideas. And so if I'm looking around, I'll see like, oh, worms and a grocery store, you know, like how it go together or something. So that's helpful to me because I can't, sometimes things just pop into my head, but I need a little bit of inspiration too. So, and I keep those, you all probably have those lists, right, of stuff. And I hardly ever go back and look at them. It's whatever popped into my head last night that I start working. Suzanne?
Love it.
I tend to be just focused on whatever project I happen to be working on. So
Yeah.
I'm not constantly looking for new ideas.
Yeah.
I think when the time comes to work on a book, then a lot of the research, and like Joan said, we're working from the mythology originally, and that will generate its own ideas, you know.
Right.
And plus we have settings that we're familiar with too, and characters that by now we know pretty well, so we can think, how would this character react in this new setting or with this, you know, particular character.
It's kind of hard sometimes when we're like, oh, we made Pandora a student, you know, a 12-year-old student, and it would work so well if she were an adult over here, but you know, you've already done it in the previous book.
Yeah. Except it's so promise in remembering what we've done.
I know, yeah.
Over that many books, but
I think it started in 2000. Our first one was published 2010, right? So
2010 was the first one. Yeah. So we probably started writing like 2008, I'm guessing 2000.
And if you're wondering if we always get along, don't try to ever write like 3 series at once, because you can tend to argue a little bit. You get a little edgy, but you know,
one time.
Yeah, we've really been pretty easygoing, both of us. We're not
But what we were doing, I think we were doing what? Grimtastic Girls, Goddess Girls, and Heroes in Training?
I think so, briefly, yeah.
And that was at the point that we said, you know, all of this, we're under too much stress. We need to pull back, you know, on how many books we're doing. Because at that point, we were doing like 9 books a year, because we were doing 3 in each series. And eventually we've gotten to the point where we're doing just one Goddess Girls. We asked our publisher if we could scale back on that in order to do a Norse mythology series, the Thunder Girls series. But now that series has ended with 4 books, and we're continuing just to do 1 book per year, which works out better, honestly, for me, because now I'm a grandmother, you know, and I've got grandkids that I want to be able to see. And it's a better life work balance, you know, for me, where I'm at right now. And Joan's able to fill in if she wants to with other projects that she does. You know, so
yeah, I've actually written a couple of graphic novels that I sold to Penguin Random House. I'm not illustrating them, but I'm really excited about those, because I never thought that would be me, like someone writing that, but and I was just like determined to do it. In a way, when I go back and look at it, I'm like, I don't remember writing it. I'm like, who wrote this, kind of, because it's just, I honestly don't know what was happening, but I feel like I almost channeled it. Have you ever had a book where you felt like you just channeled what someone else was doing or something? It's weird.
Well, when you look back on early stuff that you did, you know, like decades ago, I think I will get that feeling like I was a whole nother person then, you know? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I don't want to I think we should do it again.
Do it again. Yeah. Okay.
This is a delight to get to meet you in person.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, next time I come to Washington, maybe we can all hang out.
Oh yeah,
that would be
fun.
Fun.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Bye.
Bye.